Hello everyone. I am Dr. Sharat Kumar, Assistant Professor, Department of Wildlife Sciences, Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh. In this lecture, I shall be discussing about the Wildlife Protection Act 1972. In India, due to ecological degradation and habitat loss, various species of wild animals and plants are facing the risk of extinction and decrease in number, and this leads to environmental instability. A drastic decrease in the flora and fauna can cause ecological imbalance which affect many aspects of climate and the ecosystem and in turn the human welfare. Therefore, to protect and conserve the wildlife of India, Indian Parliament enacted the Wildlife Protection Act in 1972. The act aimed to provide for the protection of the country's wild animals, birds and plant species in order to ensure environmental and ecological security. Wildlife Protection Act 1972. It is an act to provide for the protection of wild animals, birds and plants and for matter connected therewith or ancillary or incidental thereto with a view to ensuring the ecological and environmental security of the country. The Act was enacted on 9th September 1972 and it now extends to the whole of the India. Before 2019, it was not applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. The Act contains 66 sections in 7 chapters. It has 4 schedules of wild animals and plants and give varying degree of protection under different schedules. Salient features of Wildlife Protection Act. The Act provides the definition of various technical terms related with wildlife conservation. It provides guidelines for the appointment of Wildlife Advisory Board, wildlife wardens, their duties and power, etc. It provides framework for setting of a network of protected areas and guidelines for the effective management of these protected areas. The Act made comprehensive list of threatened wildlife species for the first time and provision of hunting of the endangered species. The Act provides guidelines for the protection of some endangered species through recommending the management strategies, for example, tiger. The Act also provides guidelines for the constitution of Central Zoo Authority, Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. It also provides for legal powers to officer and punishment to offenders of wildlife crime. It helps in implementation of obligation under CITES and prevent and regulate the trade in endangered species of plants and animals. Let's study the Act in detail. So first take the chapter 1, which is entitled as Preliminary and deals with short title, extent and commencement of the Act. Section 1 of the Act deals with the short title, extent, commencement, while the Section 2 deals with the definition of the important term used in the Act. The Act in short is named as Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Few definitions of the important term used in the Act are animal. Animal includes amphibians, birds, mammals and reptiles and their young, and also include in case of the birds and reptiles their eggs. Wild animals means any animal found wild in nature and includes any animal specified in Schedule 1, Schedule 2, wherever found. Wildlife includes any animal, bees, butterflies, crustaceans, fish and moths, and aquatic or land vegetation which forms part of any habitat, It means harming the habitat is harming the wildlife. Hunting, with its grammatical variations and cognate expressions, includes capturing, killing, poisoning, snaring, and trapping or any wild animals and every attempt to do so. Driving any wild animal for any purposes. Injuring or destroying or taking any part of the body of any such animal, or in the case of wild birds or reptiles, damaging the eggs of such birds or reptiles or disturbing the eggs or nest of such birds or reptiles is also hunting. So Wildlife Protection Act adopts very broad definition of hunting, and even disturbance to nest or eggs of a bird or reptile is considered as the hunting of wild animals. Chapter 2 of the Wildlife Protection Act is entitled as Authorities to be appointed or constituted under this Act. The Section 3 of the Act deals with the appointment of various officers in center, such as Director of Wildlife Preservation, Assistant Director of Wildlife Preservation, and any officer which may be deemed necessary to be appointed. The directors so appointed shall exercise their rights and power in accordance with the rules or special direction of the central government. The assistant director appointed herein will act as subordinate to the director. Under Section 4, the Act states that a state government can appoint a chief wildlife warden, wildlife wardens, one honorary wildlife warden in each district, and any official that may be necessary. All such officers as appointed by the government shall exercise their right and powers in accordance with the rules or special direction of the state government or rules given by notification in form of official gazette. Section 5 deals with the power of authorities to delegate. The director, the chief wildlife wardens can delegate all of his powers or any of his powers and duties with the prior approval of the government to any officer who is subordinate to him. Section 5A talks about Constitution of National Board for Wildlife, its member and chairman, vice chairman. Prime Minister is the chairman of the National Board for Wildlife. In addition to this, is also describe the various members who can be the part of the National Board for Wildlife. Section 6 deals with the constitution of Wildlife Advisory Boards, its member and chairman and vice chairman. Section 7 prescribes the procedure to be followed by the board. It also states that the board shall meet twice a year at a place which the state government may order. The Section 8 explains about the duties of the Wildlife Advisory Boards. It states that it is the duty of the State Advisory Board to advise the state government on the issues relating to the selection of areas for declaring the same as sanctuaries, national park, community reserves, conservation reserves, tiger reserves, and also it has to guide the government in formulation of policy for protection and conservation of wildlife and some specified plants. Chapter 3 is entitled as Hunting of Wild Animals, and Section 9 states that no person shall hunt any wild animal specified in Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 except in some special circumstances as specified under the Section 11 and 12. Now learn what are the conditions specified under the Section 11 and 12 under which the Chief Wildlife Warden or any authorized officer of the first department is empowered to provide the permission to hunt the animals. Section 11 specified certain cases in which hunting of wild animals can be permitted. These certain conditions are: the condition 1, if the chief wildlife warden is satisfied that the animal listed in Schedule 1 has to become dangerous to human life, or such animal has been affected by the incurable disease from which it cannot be recovered. In such a situation, the chief wildlife warden may give in writing the permit and also stating the reason for granting the permission to a person to hunt such animal. If the chief wildlife warden or authorized officer is satisfied that the animal listed in Schedule 2 has become a threat to human life or any property, or such animal has been affected by the incurable disease from which it cannot be recovered, in such a situation, the chief wildlife warden may give in writing the permit and also stating the reason for granting such permission to a person to hunt such animal. This section also states that killing or wounding of animal in self-defense is not a offense, provided that such a person has not violated any rules under this act and such killing of an animal was necessary, it could not be avoided. This section also said that any wild animal killed or wounded in the defense of any person shall be a government property. Section 12 empower Chief Wildlife Warden to grant permit for a special purpose by giving an order in writing and collecting the prescribed fee from the person so that he may be entitled for hunting for special purposes such as education, scientific research, scientific management, collection of specimen for recognized zoos, for museum and their other similar institutions, derivation, collection or preparation of snake venom for manufacture of life-saving drugs, provided that such a permit should be granted with previous permission of the central government in case of Schedule 1 and state government in case of the Schedule 2 animals. Chapter 3A, entitled Protection of Specified Plant, and focuses on the protection of specified rare plant in the Act. These plants are listed in the Schedule 3 of the Act. Section 17A explains that it is prohibited to pick, uproot or any other damage done to the specified plant mentioned in the Schedule 3 of the Act. Section 17B talks about granting permission for special purposes, and it states that Chief Wildlife Warden, after taking prior permission from the state government, can grant permission to any person to pick, uproot, acquire or collect only for the purposes of education, scientific research, collection, preservation and display in a herbarium of any scientific institutions, or propagation by a person or an institution approved by the central government. Remaining sections from 17C to 17H talk about provision to cultivate the specific plant if the person intended to do so is not a license holder, prohibited to have business dealing of the specific plant without a license, declaration of stock of the specified plant, possession of the specified plant by the person who has acquired the license, etc. And it also states that the specified plants are the government property. Chapter 4 is entitled protected areas and deals with declaration of 4 categories of protected areas as wildlife sanctuary, national park, conservation reserve and community reserve. Section 18 of the chapter 4 state that state government declare its intention to constitute an area other than reserve forest or territorial water as sanctuary if the area is ecologically important. Under section 19, the collector has to determine the nature, extent of a right of any person in or over the land which has been declared as a wildlife sanctuary and can do inquiry under the section 22. Section 20 said that after the issue of a notification, no right shall be acquired in, on or over the land comprised within the limit of sanctuary except by succession, testamentary or the intestate. It means that people are not allowed to purchase the land inside the areas which are declared as the sanctuary. Section 23 talks about the power of the collector which he or she may exercise during the due course of the inquiry. Under section 24 and 25, the collector has to pass an order by rejecting or either by admitting the claim of a person claiming right over a property which has already been declared as national park or sanctuary. He can admit or reject the claim either in whole or in part. Section 26A, declaration of an area as sanctuary. So, a notification has been issued under section 18 and the period for preferring claims has elapsed and all claims, if any, made in relation to any land in the area intended to be declared as sanctuary have been disposed by the state government or any area comprised within any reserve forest or any part of the territorial water which is considered by the state government to be of adequate ecological, faunal, floral, geomorphological, natural or zoological significance for the purpose of protecting, propagating or developing wildlife or its environment is to be included in a sanctuary. Section 27 talks about the restriction in the sanctuary. So, there are certain activities which are restricted under the sanctuary. Section 28 empowers Chief Wildlife Warden to grant a permit to enter or reside in a sanctuary for some special purposes such as photography, scientific research, etc. Section 29 provides that no person shall destroy, exploit or remove any wildlife including forest produce from a sanctuary, but local people can collect things for their own use but not for the commercial purposes. So, section 29 prevent the destruction or the collection of forest produces from the sanctuary for the commercial purposes. Section 35 deals with the declaration of national park by the state government. So, section 18 to 34 deals with the declaration of the sanctuary, while the section 35 deals with the declaration of national park and the terms and conditions which are applicable on the sanctuary will also automatically applicable on the national parks. Section 36 deals with declaration and management of conservation reserves and community reserves. These categories of protected areas are inserted to promote the involvement of local communities in the conservation and management of protected areas. Let's look in the details of these two protected areas. So, these two protected areas are added or inserted in the Wildlife Protection Act by having an amendment in 2002. So 36A talks about the declaration of the conservation reserve. The state government may, after having consultation with the local communities, declare any area owned by the government, particularly the areas adjacent to national park and sanctuaries, and those areas which link one protected areas with another as a conservation reserve for protecting landscapes, seascapes, flora and fauna and their habitat, provided that where the conservation reserve included any land owned by the central government, its prior concurrence shall be obtained before making such declaration. Section 36B talks about the formation of Conservation Reserve Management Committee. State government shall constitute a Conservation Reserve Management Committee to advise the Chief Wildlife Warden to conserve, manage and maintain the conservation reserve. It also provides the details how to constitute the management committee. So committee should have representative of forest or wildlife department, one representative of each village panchayat in whose jurisdiction the reserve is located, 3 representative of non-governmental organization working in the field of wildlife conservation, and 1 representative each from the Department of Agriculture and Animal Husbandry. Section 36C deals with declaration of community reserve. A state government may, where the community or an individual has volunteered to conserve wildlife and its habitat, declare any private or community land not comprised within a national park, sanctuary or a conservation reserve as a community reserve for protecting fauna, flora and traditional or cultural conservation values and practices. After the issue of notification, no change in the land use pattern except in accordance with the resolution passed by the management committee and approval by same by the state government can be done. Section 36D talks about the Community Reserve Management Committee, and it states that the state government shall constitute a Community Reserve Management Committee, and this committee is responsible for conserving, maintaining and managing the community reserve. It also provides the details how to constitute or how to select the members of the management committee. The committee should have 5 representatives nominated by the village panchayat or where such panchayats does not exist by the members of the Gram Sabha, and 1 representative of the state forest or wildlife department under whose jurisdiction the community reserve is located. Competent authority to prepare and implement the management plan and to take steps to ensure the protection of wildlife and its habitat. This committee shall elect a chairman who shall also be the honorary wildlife warden of the area. This committee shall regulate its own procedure, including the quorum during the meetings. The section 37, which is deals with the closed areas, which is now have no relevance in India. So this section is deleted or omitted from the Act. Section 38 empowers central government to declare the areas if conditions are fulfilled as sanctuary, national park and conservation reserve. So the power given by the section 38 provide the conditions or the power to this central government to declare any area as a sanctuary, national park or a conservation reserve. Thanks, and remaining chapters of the Wildlife Protection Act will be discussed in the next lecture.